The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem just delivered a scorching report to Congress about the dramatic turnaround at our southern border. While the mainstream media works overtime to hide these incredible accomplishments, we're going to show you the unfiltered truth about what is really happening. So, are you ready for a transformation that mirrors our nation's border security revolution? Just as Secretary Noem has reshaped our national security, our breakthrough collagen formula is revolutionizing skin health. Recent studies show this unique peptide blend works at the cellular level, just like how our new border policies work at the systemic level. While career bureaucrats said change was impossible, we proved them wrong. Similarly, while others said aging was inevitable, our collagen formula proves otherwise. Take action now and transform your skin's future. Visit healthwithgary.com for an exclusive 51% discount. Time for your own security upgrade. So let's dive right into Secretary Noem's bombshell testimony, where she revealed just how dramatically the border situation has changed in only 100 days under President Trump. First, let's hear Secretary Noem describe the astonishing turnaround at our border. Take a look.
Gentlelady from South Dakota, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Underwood, and members of this committee for giving me the honor of being before you today. As a former colleague of the House of Representatives, I recognize the important role that you play in oversight over the federal government and our agencies, and I'm grateful for the chance to come here and talk about all of the good work that the Department of Homeland Security has done, the employees and the people who walk alongside us each and every day to follow through on what President Trump has committed to the American people, and that is to make America safe again. Today, I'm very proud of the accomplishments that we've tackled, and we've delivered the most secure border in American history. At the southern border, we have obtained near total control with daily encounters now down over 93% since President Trump took office. March saw the lowest number of border encounters in recorded history in the history of the United States of America at just under 7,200. That means that there were days where we had less than 200 encounters, which again is the lowest in recorded history. Under the previous administration, U.S. Customs and Border Protection was at times encountering over 15,000 people a day, which mean efforts were diverted into processing and facilitating an invasion of our country instead of doing their jobs. This astonishing turnaround is a testament to the resolve and to the leadership of President Trump to make America safe again, and it is accomplished by the incredible work of the people of the department. The secure border has allowed the Border Patrol to zero in on cartels and their illicit activity, and President Trump has designated 6 different cartels and criminal gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. This has allowed us to use a whole-of-government approach to go after drug traffickers, human traffickers, and in March, fentanyl traffic at the border fell by 54% compared to the previous year. We are enforcing immigration laws to identify, to arrest, detain, and to remove dangerous illegal criminals out of our country. And we're prioritizing individuals that have committed crimes in our communities. Aliens are a threat to our public safety and to our national security, and especially those that are affiliated with terrorist organizations such as Tren de Aragua and MS-13. This includes those who have final orders of removal in place, are a priority for this administration. We've also worked with President Trump on his America First trade agenda through the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol actions and enforcement. The Biden administration hollowed out America's industrial base, and they shipped our jobs overseas. Well, President Trump is changing all of that. His actions are proving that tariffs are an effective negotiating tool to address trade imbalances. And in fact, companies are reshoring jobs here in America every single day. The Department of Homeland Security is reforming and rethinking federal improvement in our involvement in emergency response and management as well. President Trump recently announced new members to the FEMA Review Council, which I will co-chair with the Secretary of Defense. Now, this council is charged with fixing a broken system, and it is a system that will, when fixed, return power to state emergency management directors to make America safe again. And we're also taking steps to defend the nation's transportation systems, which are vulnerable to targets and attacks. The Transportation Security Administration is responsible for ensuring the security of all of those that travel. In a single day, there are over 45,000 flights and nearly 2.9 people travel on our airlines and our passengers in the United States. We're fulfilling our obligation to enforce and to launch Real ID in order to follow federal law that was enacted nearly 20 years ago. Validated IDs will secure travel, safeguard our elections, and make sure that we never experience and work to prevent a 9/11 attack again. As technology advances, so do the threats to our nation, and that's why cybersecurity is so crucial to our future. Countries like Communist China have both the capability and the intent to infiltrate and to potentially disrupt our critical infrastructure systems. The Homeland Security Department is responsible for 10 of the 16 different critical infrastructures. And despite these threats, the Biden administration instead used CISA to play politics and to police speech. Under President Trump, we've been working to get CISA back on mission and to make sure that they're focused on cybersecurity. Now, the Coast Guard is the only branch of our military and our U.S. Armed Forces that is under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security, and it has many different missions with specialized needs going forward. As we secure our southern border, the cartels have shifted their activities to our maritime borders, and the Coast Guard has already surpassed fiscal year 2024 in the amount of drug interdiction numbers that they have encountered, and they have also excelled at search and rescue and illegal interdiction. Since the Coast Guard is facing our greatest readiness crisis right now since World War II, we need to act to make sure they have the tools, training, and equipment that they need to be the tip of the spear in our national security response. We have a plan to reinvigorate the Coast Guard, and this is a critical component of our Homeland Security mission. Now, with Force Design 2028, which some of you may have heard about already, we will transform the Coast Guard into a more agile, capable, and a responsive force. And since I took office, one of the responsibilities that I have is reforming the Secret Service in the wake of the July 13th assassination attempt on President Trump. We have reassessed the Secret Service's needs. We've refocused recruitment away from what the Biden administration was prioritizing with DEI objectives, and instead bring people in with experience and with training that align with the agency's zero-fail mission. These accomplishments are just a portion, Mr. Chairman, of what the department has achieved in just 100 days. And with the support of this committee, we're able to make the department more efficient and more effective into the future.
Did you catch that, Patriots? A 93% reduction in border encounters, the lowest number in recorded American history. This administration has accomplished more in 100 days than the previous administration did in 4 years, and they did it without any new laws, just by enforcing the laws already on the books. Now watch. She details how they're prioritizing the removal of dangerous criminals allowed to remain in our country. Watch this.
Madam Secretary, again, great to have you here. In your service, you've prioritized detaining and removing literally the worst of the worst in our country that have arrived here illegally, including those that have committed violent crimes against our fellow Americans. I think we're all in support of that effort. Can you tell us, you may not have this information, I'm just curious, how many illegal aliens have committed serious offenses against our own citizens?
Yeah, there are tens of thousands of illegal aliens that have committed crimes against individuals in this country. And we have worked very hard to make sure that those are the individuals that we're going after and deporting as soon as possible. There have been over 160,000 repatriations targeting these individuals, returning them back to their home countries and facing consequences and legal action because of that. President Trump has told us to make these individuals a priority and to make sure that we're identifying those with final removal orders to remove. And overwhelmingly, the American people have supported this.
That's right. 160,000 criminal aliens have been removed and sent back to their countries. This is what America First looks like in action. Remember when we were told constantly that nothing could be done? The system was broken beyond repair. It turns out all we needed was leadership with the will to enforce our laws. But it gets worse. Secretary Noem revealed how the previous administration deliberately tried to hide the extent of crimes committed by illegal aliens. Listen to this shocking revelation.
The Biden administration closed an office within ICE that helped us better track criminal activity by illegal aliens and to give resources to those families, to let them be informed on when cases were in court, if the perpetrator of their crime was going to be released, if they were in custody. The Voices office within ICE was opened under the first Trump administration, and President Biden closed that office, I believe, to cover up exactly how many crimes were committed against people in this country by illegal aliens.
They closed it to cover it up. You heard that right. The Biden administration shut down the Voice's office within ICE that was specifically designed to help victims of crimes committed by illegal aliens. Why would they do that unless they were trying to hide the truth from the American people? This is the kind of deliberate deception we've come to expect. Now, the Secretary also revealed how they're dramatically expanding partnerships with local law enforcement through the 287G program, something the previous administration actively dismantled. Listen to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Noem, I have to say, it's already been mentioned a couple times, the amazing speed with which you all turned around the southern border. And I know that a big piece of that was your endorsement of the 287G program. I fought with Secretary Mayorkas, your predecessor, to try and expand that program. He refused to do it, even though his own acting ICE secretary said in a hearing before this committee that 287G was the best thing since sliced bread because it protected officers and the community. And so I want to thank you for that. You all came in and overnight, it seems, added 300 agencies to the 287G program. That's an amazing accomplishment, and I think that's a reason for a lot of the success that you've seen there. In fact, my own agency, where I had started 287G back 15 years ago, we were part of Operation Tidal Wave, and just great success in Florida with all the sheriffs and chiefs coming together. 1,120 illegal aliens taken off the street, 63% of which, Madam Secretary, actually had criminal arrests and convictions prior to that. So two questions about 287G. Number one, what can we do to help you get more agencies involved? And number two, what do you need from the standpoint of technology? You just mentioned the technology. What can we do to help you get those agencies trained and the technology that they need to get into those databases so that we can actually run these 287G programs, which are better than sliced bread, at top efficiency?
Yeah, well, thank you, Congressman, for talking about this program, because it is incredibly important to our strategy of having the enforcement that we need to really address the criminal activities that we've seen out on the ground. 287G is a partnership between our office, ICE, CBP, that brings everybody to the table. It's an agreement that's signed with local law enforcement or state law enforcement that allows us to operate in a task force model to go out and make sure that we're having more bodies, more people a part and backup of these operations on the ground going after dangerous criminals. We have today, I believe, 598 agreements out there across the country, over 6,200 different officers that has brought alongside of us to work alongside of us to protect our communities, and they've done incredible work. You referenced what was done in Florida on Operation Tidal Wave. Those 1,120 dangerous criminals are off the streets now today, and they are people that were here illegally, broke our laws, and now they are having the opportunity to face consequences and to go home to their home countries. I would say that we're looking for more agreements like that across the country, and we'll continue to build on it. What Florida did by having a whole of state approach is what we want to build out and model in every other state as well. And we've had partnerships from the DEA, ATF, DOJ, state highway patrols. We've had, obviously ICE, U.S. Marshals, CBP, local law enforcement, cities, county sheriffs. People who've committed their whole life to upholding the law and having the scales of justice apply equally to everybody are a part of this team. And it has been wonderful to see people jump in and be part of it to make sure that we have not just the authorities that we need to go out there and to work, but also to have the local knowledge and the people in their community that really want to be a part of the solution and making them safe again.
Almost 600 agreements with local law enforcement agencies across the country, bringing over 6,200 additional officers into the fight. This is how you create a force multiplier effect. Instead of handcuffing our ICE agents, this administration is giving them the backup they need to do their jobs effectively. Perhaps most shocking was Secretary Noem's revelation about how the previous administration was actually using your tax dollars to house illegal criminals. Watch.
Good morning, Madam Secretary. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your commitment to getting Homeland Security back to mission. You know, we saw such a straying from that in the previous administration, and President Trump's border security promises were really delivered on day one and continue to be executed on. So I just want to say thank you for that. Under your leadership, those illegal encounters at our southern border are dropping to historic lows. Our immigration laws are finally being enforced. The border wall is back under construction. DHS is finally working again on protecting the homeland. No new laws, but we have a new president and a new secretary, so I want to say thank you. Last year, before this committee, Secretary Mayorkas at the time came before us pushing the Biden administration's $4.7 billion Southwest Border Contingency Fund. All that it was a slush fund, we know, designed to bypass Congress and bankroll those failed policies and sanctuary cities doing their bidding. He claimed it was to manage surges, but those surges were of their own doing, sending a clear signal to illegal immigrants, the traffickers, the cartels, that our border was open for business for them. That wasn't enforcement, that was actual chaos at our southern border by the taxpayers' dime. So I see that as just one of the many blatant attempts for Secretary Mayorkas at the time and President Biden to misuse taxpayer dollars intentionally without accountability. But again, under President Trump and your leadership, we have reversed course there. Programs like the Shelter and Services Program that enabled that abuse have been gutted, and their funding is now going to real border enforcement. So I'd like to drill down a little bit, Madam Secretary, on the misuse of those dollars under the last administration. Can you walk us through some of the specific programs or activities under the Biden administration that enabled this crisis and how you've worked to unwind the programs?
Well, it was the Shelter and Services Program, which you referenced specifically. Those dollars were taken and manipulated to facilitate illegal activity and housing for illegal aliens and criminals that were in this country, and gave them a place to set up shop and to conduct their trafficking, their drug dealing, and also their crimes against their communities that they live in. A prime example is the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. Filled hundreds and hundreds of illegal aliens, many of them criminals, part of foreign terrorist organizations such as TDA, and in fact, Laken Riley's killer stayed there, and paid for by the American taxpayer, courtesy of Joe Biden.
That's right, Patriots. Your hard-earned tax dollars were being used not to deport dangerous criminals, but to house them in luxury hotels in New York City. And according to the secretary, even individuals tied to foreign terrorist organizations were benefiting from the program. This wasn't just incompetence. It looks like a deliberate effort to undermine our national security. She also made it clear that merely being in the country illegally constitutes a crime. Here's what she said. Watch.
Do you by chance have any updated numbers on how many convicted criminal aliens we still have loose in the country?
We believe we have more than that, and are continuing to do an assessment. And of course, every day we continue to see crimes in this country that are perpetuated by individuals that we didn't necessarily know that we were here. What I will tell you is that the president, under his leadership, has already arrested and is prosecuting and held accountable over 250 known terrorists, people who are on the known terrorist watch list. We have over 65,000 individuals that just ICE alone has arrested that are criminal aliens. That are being held accountable for their crimes in their communities. We also talk extensively about different governors that we're able to work with. Many of them are people within their facilities that have committed crimes that they've been arrested, and they're holding and detaining them. If they are illegals, many times they're facing their consequences in their jail and prison time before they can be returned to their country. So, these, by virtue of being in this country illegally, you are breaking the law and you are a criminal. And we've seen the previous administration pervert and manipulate their data and information to give us numbers that don't necessarily square with what the facts are on the ground. So there's many, many more criminals in this country, and we're going to continue to target and go after them to make sure that we're protecting families.
The secretary is absolutely right. The previous administration tried to play word games and pretend that being here illegally somehow wasn't a crime. But Secretary Noem clearly states, if you're here illegally, you've broken the law, period. And now this administration is finally enforcing those laws. Next, she revealed the massive backlog of removal orders created by the previous administration. Check this out.
I'm curious if we know how many illegal aliens currently have final orders for removal from an immigration judge, and we just haven't had an opportunity to execute those orders.
Well, that is the challenge that we have, is that we have literally millions of illegal aliens that have overstayed or are here illegally that need to have a final order as issued. We have hundreds of thousands that are going out and targeted and being removed from this country today, that ICE is working every day in coordination with all other areas of our government to get them removed from our country. But we do have a backlog, because this was not a priority under the last administration. So we have up to 1 million cases that are backlogged that need to be processed by an immigration judge in an immigration court in order to make sure that we are having those final removal orders and that we can take action on them.
1 million cases backlogged in the system. This is what happens when you have an administration that refuses to enforce the law. They created a massive backlog that's going to take time to work through. But unlike the previous administration, President Trump and Secretary Noem, they're committed to working through that backlog and enforcing those removal orders. Next up, she detailed how the administration is strengthening our intelligence capabilities through better partnerships with allies. Listen to this.
States like mine, Iowa and South Dakota, are not necessarily border states, but certainly every state did become a border state under the previous administration with that chaos we saw. And the consequences of that porous border really reach far beyond the Rio Grande River. There, the deadly fentanyl coming into our communities, the adversaries taking advantage and exploiting our immigration system. And so that's what I kind of want to touch on, is the adversaries and what they were able to do, specifically China. To put it in perspective, in the first 7 months of fiscal year 2024, more than 27,000 Chinese nationals were encountered at the southern border. Under President Trump, we've seen that number drop significantly, reflecting that clear shift in deterrence and enforcement. So can you walk us through what specific mechanisms have been put in place to ensure that these individuals from adversarial nations are now being thoroughly vetted, and how that process has changed since the previous administration?
Yes, and every country is being treated the same as far as how we are treating the folks that are there and here illegally. People that came into this country from China and from other countries are all being vetted and their background checks being gone through. And I would say some of the reasons that we've had to reevaluate some of the programs that were abused under the Biden administration is because countries weren't participating with us. They weren't sharing their information. One of the things I've challenged Canada with in a lot of the discussions that we've had over recent months was they weren't taking their own citizens back home that were here in this country illegally, and they weren't sharing all of the criminal background checks of individuals who were in our country illegally. They weren't telling us who they were or what they had done, if they had human smuggling in their background or crimes. And so that was some of the access that we were asking them for. We were grateful that they addressed, for instance, designating a fentanyl czar and doing, but that information sharing is critically important. And do not have that kind of partnership with China. We didn't just see Chinese nationals infiltrate our country over the southern border. They're coming over the northern border as well. And we see needs on the Great Lakes region and people coming in. It's easy to access Canada, and once they do, then they drop down into our vulnerable areas. So we have continued to maintain resources and strengthen them at the northern border as well. But we work closely with Interpol that has an agreement with many different countries to do vetting and background and criminal background information sharing on folks across the world. But many of the times when the State Department is negotiating on repatriation and travel documents, they're having discussions on what we can do to share information. When I made trips to El Salvador, to Colombia, and to Mexico, those trips were made so that I could get those governments to share more information with us. In fact, one of the things that we did while we were there is sign new agreements with those countries to share more data and information, to have them give us biometric information that they collected, to give us more thorough travel documents of individuals that were of concern here and had been breaking our laws. And so having those discussions gives us more information to make sure that this country is safer into the future.
Do you feel like those conversations have helped to inform broader national security efforts?
Absolutely.
Cross-departmentally? And, when we think about the real risk here, it's these international transnational criminal gangs, the cartels, state-sponsored networks. Obviously we talk about the transnationals, and the reason the PRC is not cooperating and the CCP is not cooperating is because they are intent on infiltrating our country. So you feel like all those relationships are really helping us to strengthen the intel that we are able to gather.
Absolutely. We've seen many, many times where information that we got on somebody who was here that may have been on our terrorist watch list, suspected terrorist watch list, or someone who is a very dangerous part of a foreign terrorist organization, that information may have been shared with us from another country because of those security agreements that we have in place. And when countries do not adhere to sharing that type of information, they don't get the privileges necessary that have been granted to them in the past. And we've seen that with visa overstays. We've seen that with lack of information sharing, that perhaps they don't get to continue in programs that are under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security because they haven't been willing partners to help us secure our country.
Yeah, certainly accountability is back, and appreciate that. Thank you so much, Madam Secretary.
Thank you.
My friends, this is what real diplomacy looks like. Getting other countries to cooperate with us to identify and remove dangerous individuals. Notice how she's focused on actionable intelligence and practical cooperation, not empty political gestures. She also acknowledged the financial burden that states like Texas had to bear when the previous administration abandoned their responsibilities. Here's what she said. Watch.
I want to thank you for making your first official trip as secretary. You went to the border, right? You went to Del Rio in my district, and you saw it firsthand. You're not new to this as governor. You were very active along that. So on that note, I want to get your opinion on states being reimbursed for some of the fundings, particularly Texas. What are your thoughts on Texas being reimbursed for some of the funding that we've had to pay for this?
Yeah, it's been incredible, the partnership that Texas has put together with the federal government, and how they stepped up so many times when the Biden administration did not secure our border. Texas filled the gap. And when I was governor, I deployed my National Guard there to facilitate and help, as well as did other governors in the country, and did what we could to get by until we had a new president that truly cared about keeping America safe. There have not been any decided decisions on reimbursing states, but I know many of the governors have asked for it, and we've appreciated their help. And so that's an ongoing conversation with every new agreement or new ask we have of states. If we're asking them to commit to the 287G program, seeing what we can do to help meet their financial needs is incredibly important. If it's asking the National Guard to step up, or even past spending that they've incurred, I know that President Trump is appreciative of the efforts and the partnerships and wants to continue those conversations.
Yeah.
So think about that. States had to use their own resources to do the federal government's job because the Biden administration refused to the border. Texas and other states should be absolutely reimbursed for stepping up when the federal government failed the American people. And finally, she made it absolutely clear that she and President Trump are committed to upholding the Constitution, unlike certain members of the previous administration. Listen to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This weekend, the president made the remarkable statement that he, quote, doesn't know whether he has to uphold the Constitution. You, however, have taken a different position, both in your confirmation hearing and when you took the oath of office. You said that you were committed to complying with the Constitution. Do you still stand by that statement?
Absolutely. I believe President Trump
Excellent.
as well.
Let's start with Article 1, which gives Congress and only Congress the power of the purse. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. But this administration is freezing, terminating, and even clawing back federal grants and awards that were already signed into law. These are tax dollars that were appropriated to Congress for the specific purposes that we laid out. So, Secretary, let me ask you, do you believe the administration has the authority to subvert appropriations law to freeze and terminate congressional funding?
The administration and the Department of Homeland Security used our authorities that we have to evaluate every grant that was in front of us and meet statutory requirements, but also to make sure that they were being spent appropriate.
So, of course, the president is within his authorities.
Make sure that
ma'am, this is my time. Thank you so much. Of course, the president's within his authorities to drive policy decisions within the bounds of federal law and the Constitution, but that's not what you've been doing. What I'm asking is whether you believe you have the authority to ignore appropriations law. Do you believe that the Constitution gives the executive branch unilateral authority to withhold funds appropriated by the legislative branch?
We have evaluated grants to make sure if they're being spent appropriately, and work that is underway and was authorized has continued. Other grants have not been started and have not been authorized or obligated. We have reevaluated. And I think you're talking specifically about grants potentially within FEMA that were non-disaster related grants.
I'm talking
Those
broadly, ma'am.
programs are
And
being-
Article 2 does not give the executive the authority to withhold funds, period.
Secretary Noem stands firmly committed to upholding the Constitution, and she makes it clear that President Trump is as well, despite the misleading questions from certain members of Congress trying to suggest otherwise. So, the evidence is clear. We're witnessing the most dramatic border security turnaround in American history. In just 100 days, this administration has proven that the border crisis was never a problem that couldn't be solved. It was a problem the previous administration didn't want to solve. While the mainstream media tries to distract you with manufactured outrage and political theater, the work of securing our nation continues. And we here at the Next News Network will continue to bring you the truth they don't want you to hear. Make sure you check out our merch shop in the description below at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com and support the work we're doing here and grab a hat or a shirt.